Hi and welcome to Rewind to Easter. We can't invite you to come into our church buildings, but we hope you have some fun today hearing the Easter story and learning why Easter is so important to Christians all around the world. So to get you going, to make sure you're awake, to have a bit of fun, we thought we'd start with a little bit of a secret celebrity quiz. So in a moment you're going to see some pictures of famous people, and they're going to be partially covered up by some Easter pictures, and all you've got to do is guess the celebrity. So let's go to the first one. I wonder if you know who this one is. Well, that was easy, wasn't it? It's Olaf from the film Frozen. Let's try the next one. Well, that's a very famous and royal face. That was Prince William. How about the next one? That's Harry Kane, our English footballer. What about this next one? Well, if you said it was Ron Weasley from Harry Potter, you'd be right. I'll even give you an extra point if you said Rupert Grint, which is the name of the actor. Let's look at the next one. That one's Ariana Grande. Oh, this next one's a double act. I'm sure you got that one. It was Ant and Dec. And we've just got this last one now. That's right, it's Gru from the film Despicable Me. So hopefully you're all wide awake. Hopefully you've all had a bit of a giggle and a bit of fun. And in the video now, you're going to see and hear from a few different people, and they're going to share with you the Easter story.
Hello. I'd like to introduce you to my friend who's going to help me tell a story, and it's a story where he is one of the star players. He's going to whisper it to me and I'm going to tell you what happens. Are you ready? He tells me that he was tied up outside his master's house when two men turned up and asked if they could take him away. Well, his master said, "Who wants him?" And they said, "Well, the master wants him." So anyway, they untied him and took him to this man called Jesus. Now, he'd never been ridden before, so he was a little bit nervous. But what the people did was they laid coats onto his back. It made a bit like a saddle. And when Jesus got on, it felt very comfortable. He said he didn't mind it at all. And Jesus was very kind. So they started to walk, Jesus and his friends, into Jerusalem. When suddenly he noticed there were a lot of people around. They were doing what? They were laying their coats in front of him and Jesus. He said it felt a bit like a red carpet. He felt a real celebrity. Anyway, they were walking over these coats and people were shouting and cheering. What were they shouting? Hosanna! Hosanna to the Son of David! They were shouting. They were also waving things. Palm branches that they cut from the trees. It was a real procession. And you were at the front of it. How exciting. Anyway, eventually they arrived in Jerusalem, and the people were still very excited, and they were telling people that they'd been part of this procession. But some people didn't look very pleased. The religious leaders from the temples and the synagogues. They said something to Jesus. They told him to tell the people to be quiet. And Jesus said to them, if I tell the people to be quiet, these stones would stand up and shout praise. Well, that's a strange thing to say, isn't it? Anyway, the religious leaders slunk off. And what happened to you? They gave you some oats and some water and then took you back. He wonders if you will remember his part in the story. Yeah, I do think they will, won't you? That's made you very happy. So now, to hear some more of the story, we're going to hand you over to the next speaker. Enjoy the rest of this session. Bye.
As we continue to rewind to Easter, we're now going to hear about what happened at the last meal that Jesus shared with his friends, the disciples, a meal that Christians call the Last Supper. And I'm going to tell you the story now with the help of some pictures. It was very nearly the celebration of the Passover, the special festival when Jewish people remembered the time when God rescued their ancestors from slavery in Egypt and led them towards freedom in the promised land. Jesus and his friends had come to Jerusalem for this festival. A couple of Jesus' friends found the place and made necessary arrangements for them to gather to share a special meal as they got ready to celebrate. So when evening came, Jesus and his friends gathered together for the meal. It was a time of celebration, but even so, the disciples were uneasy. They knew that Jesus had made some powerful people very angry and turned them into his enemies, and they were afraid of what might happen next. Jesus could see that the disciples were worried. He said to them quietly, "I tell you the truth, one of you here will betray me." The disciples looked at each other in shock. Who would do such a thing? Some of them said, "Surely it isn't me, Lord." Peter, one of Jesus' closest disciples and friends, was sitting next to another disciple sat next to Jesus. He leant forward and said to the other disciple, "Ask him which one he means." So the other disciple leant towards Jesus and asked, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus replied, "It is one of the 12, the one who dips his bread into the bowl with me." Then Judas, with his head down, spoke quietly to Jesus. "It isn't me, is it?" Jesus answered, "Yes, you are the one." Judas's head went down even lower. He'd hoped that the other disciples had not heard what Jesus said, but they were paying more attention to Jesus. As they were eating the meal, Jesus took a loaf of bread. He gave thanks to God for it and broke it into pieces. As he passed the bread to the disciples, he said, "Take this and eat it. This is my body, which is given for you." Then Jesus took a full cup, again thanked God for it, and passed it around his friends. As he did so, he said, "This is my blood, which will be poured out for many people, so that their sins may be forgiven." They all took a sip from the cup. The meal went on for a long time, and when it was finished, Jesus got up from the table and went to a different part of the room. He took off his everyday clothes and wrapped a large towel around himself like a servant would do. Then he poured water into a large bowl and moved around between his friends, washing their feet. Then he dried them with the towel that was wrapped around him. When it was Peter's turn to have his feet washed, he said to Jesus, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You don't understand what I'm doing, but you will later." "No," said Peter, "you will never wash my feet." He said this because he didn't feel it was right to have Jesus wash his feet. He knew Jesus was very special. And Jesus replied back to him, "If I don't wash your feet, you can't be with me." "Then, Lord," Peter replied, "don't just wash my feet, but my hands and my head too." Jesus said to Peter that he only needed to wash his feet. That would be enough to make him thoroughly clean. When Jesus had finished washing all of the disciples' feet, he put his everyday clothes back on and returned to the table. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" Jesus asked them. "You call me Teacher and Lord, and that is who I am. And now that I've washed your feet, you can also wash one another's feet." When the meal was finally over, Jesus and his disciples ended by singing a hymn together. And then they went out into the night to go to a garden called Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives, where the story would continue.
I hope you're enjoying Rewind so far. We're going to play a game now called True or False. I'm going to ask you several questions, and when the question's been asked, if you think it's true, then I want you to stand up, and if you think it's false, then I want you to remain seated. So are you ready to play? Let's play True or False. Question number 1. 1 million chocolate Easter bunnies are made for Easter each year. True or false? The answer is false. 90 million Easter bunnies are made for Easter each year. Question number 2. In Colombia, on the day before Easter, they hold beauty competitions for their donkeys, and the donkeys are dressed in costumes. True or false? The answer is true, and the winning donkey never has to work again. Question number 3. In New Zealand and Australia, you can buy chocolate hot cross buns. True or false? The answer is true. They have chocolate chips instead of currants. Question number 4. In the Philippines, girls dress up as Easter bunnies on Easter Sunday. True or false? The answer is false. They dress up as angels. Question number 5. The first Easter baskets were made to look like birds' nests. True or false? The answer is true. They made them to look like birds' nests. And question number 6. The tallest ever Easter egg was 7.5 metres high. That's about the size of 3 adults standing on top of one another, or at least standing on their shoulders. Is the answer true or false? The answer is true. The largest Easter egg was made of marshmallows and chocolates. Hope you've enjoyed the game.
Walk!
What's happening? Jesus has been taken!
They've taken him.
Who, Tyrant? The Romans!
They've taken him! They're killing him!
The Romans have Jesus!
Back! Back!
Jesus! What is the charge?
Tamar.
This man is innocent. He is a great teacher.
I couldn't save him. I was silent.
Lord!
He saved everyone else. Why doesn't he save himself?
If he's the Messiah, let him come down now.
Come down now. Leap off. Prove your power. If you are the Son of God. If. Father, I give you my spirit.
It is finished!
It's true. It must be true. This man was a son of God.
Well, we've been hearing a bit about the Easter story, and it's really a story which the friends of Jesus had written down. And they did that, spent a lot of time telling us about what happened in that last week. For them and for us, it's the most important part of Jesus' life, because what he did wasn't just for them there, but his death and his coming alive again was for the whole world, forever. So, what happened during that last week, which we call Holy Week? Well, I'm going to try and tell you the story using this piece of paper. So during that last week, Jesus came down to Jerusalem, to the big city. So imagine this is the big city here. And everyone was really excited. They thought that Jesus was going to come and rescue them from the Romans. So they made palm branches and they waved them, singing, Hosanna, welcoming Jesus as he came to the city, waving their palm branches. But soon, Jesus began to do some strange things. He came to Jerusalem and he came to the temple. And he went into the temple and he saw people buying and selling things. And he got really angry and he threw them out, saying that this is God's house. It's a place of prayer. And during the week that followed on from there, he started telling them some strange stories which made people wonder what sort of a king was he going to be. The leaders were getting more and more angry and plotted to have him removed before he caused any more trouble. And by the Thursday, his followers were getting a bit afraid of what was going on, and they crept quietly through the back streets of Jerusalem into an upstairs attic where they hid in fear of those who were after them and Jesus. And in that room, Jesus celebrated the special Passover meal with his friends to remember how long ago God had sent Moses to rescue the people of Israel. But during the meal, however, Jesus took some of the food and drink on the table and he gave them new meanings. He held the cup of wine and he said, this will be the cup of like his blood poured out to rescue everyone. And then he took some of the special flat bread that they were eating and said that as he broke it, it was going to be like his body that would be broken to rescue everyone. And he asked them to do this again and again, to remember him. At the end of the meal, Jesus took some of his friends into a garden outside the city walls so that he could pray. But his enemies were coming to get him. And all his friends ran away while he was tied up and put on trial. People said all sorts of unkind things about him, accusing him for things he hadn't done and treating him really cruelly. But not once did he fight back, or never was he rude to them. He took all their hatred and overcame it with love. Finally, they took Jesus outside the city. Like a common criminal, they nailed him to a cross. Even then, Jesus did not give in to hatred. But even then, they heard him say, Father, forgive them. And he died. The soldiers made sure of that. And once the crowd had gone away, some of his friends, they took his body and put it in a cave. They put his body in a cave, and then a big stone was put in front, across the entrance. And it seemed that was the end. What sort of a rescuer had Jesus been? His friends went home defeated and said, well, they were just so sad. They just waited quietly until the next day, as it was a day of rest for the Jewish people. But early on the Sunday morning, some of the women went to the cave to see if they could clean up Jesus' body, because it had been buried so quickly on the Friday evening. And when they got there, they found the cave was open. They discovered that Jesus had gone. His death was not the end. Because of what Jesus had done, God had turned death back to life. Now, if you've been doing the ripping of the paper, hopefully you'll have some bits left. And these bits will spell out a word. I wonder if you can see what word it's going to be. Can you work it out yet? It's spelling out the word life. And that's why Easter is such an important time for Christians. Because of Jesus' death and his rising again, we can all know God ourselves and we can have life forever.
Hello. I don't know if you celebrate Easter with your family or with the people you live with, but I'd like to give you all a challenge. This Easter, as you eat your Easter eggs, or maybe see them in the shops, as you're walking around and you see the beautiful plants and flowers and the signs of new life, have a try at rewinding back to what really happened at Easter and think about the story behind the symbols. Remember that Easter is a time when Christians celebrate that Jesus died and rose again. Well, we've all had a lot of things to think about today, and just now we're going to take a short time to think about what Easter means for you. Think about everything you've learnt in the video up to now. Maybe you could have in your mind a picture of an Easter egg or a cross or a beautiful flower. Let's be quiet now. Thank you for joining us for Rewind. Have a lovely Easter.